All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Mindy Kahn, and I'm the chair of the Synagogue Leadership Council of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West. I currently serve on Federation's board, on the allocations committee, and I'm also the past president of Adash Shalom Synagogue in Morris Plains. It is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's Synagogue Leadership Seminar about public pre-K expansion in New Jersey and the impact on the Jewish community. So this seminar is a perfect example of Federation's ongoing commitment to partnering with synagogues to foster a vibrant Jewish community. Through the guidance of the Synagogue Leadership Council, we work together to strengthen local synagogues and advance our shared goals. As many of you know, the expansion of public pre-K in New Jersey has been a topic of growing interest and importance. The state has made significant strides in expanding access to early childhood education. And these changes have far-reaching implications for families, educators, and communities. So today we will explore how this expansion is shaping the Jewish community in Greater Metro West and what it means for our schools, synagogues, and families. We are fortunate to have a panel of experts from our Greater Metro West community who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Our panel will be led by Emily Fox, who serves as the Director of Jewish Educational Initiatives at the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, where she supports early childhood centers and congregational schools in advancing excellence and also supervises the TEAM program. Our panelists are Mara Seskauer, who is the Executive Director of Temple B'nai Abraham in Livingston, Jenny Rubin, who's the Assistant Director of Early Childhood Education and the director of the South Orange Maplewood School District program at Temple Shari Tefillah Israel in South Orange, and Rick Simon, who's the co-president of Temple B'nai Or in Morristown. Their full bios were sent to you in the reminder email, so I am not going to repeat them. They will discuss both the opportunities and challenges that this expansion presents and how the Jewish community can best respond to ensure that our youngest members receive the quality education they deserve while also staying true to our values and traditions. So before we dive into today's discussions, I want to express my gratitude to all of our speakers for their time and expertise. And thank you, our attendees, for your commitment to learning more about this important issue. Together, we can work to understand the evolving landscape of early childhood education and what it means for the future of the Jewish community in New Jersey. I encourage you all to engage actively in today's discussion by placing questions in the chat. This is an opportunity for us to learn from one another as we look ahead to the future of public pre-K education and its impact on our children and families. So thank you again, and I look forward to a productive and insightful seminar. So without further ado, I will hand over the reins to Emily Fox.
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you all for joining us tonight on what is, as Mindy said, a very timely and important topic. What I'm going to do is just sort of walk you through a little bit of the landscape, give you an overview of what's happening in New Jersey, how it's come to be so quickly, and what's coming down the pike, what we're thinking about at Federation as it pertains to the early childhood field. And then we will move, I'll try to move through that quickly so that we can spend as much time with our incredible panel of experts as possible. Let me share my screen. All right, does everybody see the beginning of a PowerPoint? Excellent. So I'm gonna go back to 2020 when many of you, I hope, remember our community study, just to give you a little bit of data that I think is still relevant, and some of it is already only 5 years later, a little outdated. The first data point that I think is really helpful and important is that the majority of children receive their formal Jewish education in an early childhood setting. And so when we think about, and that's only 30%, right? Like you can take a 30% data point and make it positive, make it negative. If you're a statistician, I think you would agree with me. And but the reality is that if 30% were receiving them when public pre-K was very minimal. What does that mean for the future, and how do we need to adapt so that families that are at this ripe age, that really, I think, where they encounter Jewish education for the first time as a family, can still continue to do that even given a changing landscape. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that when we look at the reasons for choosing preschool, parents' own needs really, I think, are among the top priorities when when you look at schedule and convenient location, which I think would still be at the top of the list 5 years later, and cost, which was towards the bottom of the list because there were not a lot of free options. I think now would move towards the top of the list for those who have the option of free, because when you compare free versus any sort of cost, that's going to be a more important issue. So let me just sort of walk you through what public pre-K is and why it matters here for us in the Greater Metro West community. I just want to sort of define that, first of all, the headline is public pre-K is here. It's in New Jersey. It's not going away. And in fact, it's only going to continue to expand. So what is public pre-K? It's school-based education that here in New Jersey is for the 3s and 4s. In some states, it's only for the 4s. We're talking about New Jersey. It's available both for the 3s and 4s, and it's publicly funded by the state. In New Jersey, it's actually not considered UPK. A lot of people will call it universal pre-K. That's true for other states. In New Jersey, that's not actually the case. We call it public pre-K because it's lottery-based. There's just simply not enough funding to ensure a spot for every child. And so each of the districts use a lottery system to place the children. The other thing that's important to define is this idea of a mixed delivery system, which refers specifically to the institutions. It's not the classrooms themselves. So a mixed delivery means that public pre-K classes can be hosted in private settings. This includes our community-based programs like our synagogues and JCCs. And it's why we are having this conversation tonight. It's why our synagogues and our potentially JCCs are able to partner with districts as host sites. I have colleagues in other states at other federations that this is the #1 thing they advocate for. So we in New Jersey are very lucky that the state recognizes the importance of private early childhood education and wants to sustain it. And we see that here. So what does this mean for the Jewish community? It means that people who used to pay, oh, I'm so sorry. I put my finger on the, just a moment. I'm going to go back. My apologies. So what does this mean for our Jewish community? It means people who used to pay for preschool now don't have to. And so whereas Jewish education was something so easy for them to get because it was in the preschool that they needed for childcare anyway, now that they have this choice, they may not be getting they're receiving their Jewish education in such an instant way. In the ECCs where that are in districts that public pre-K currently exist, we are seeing a significant decline in enrollment in their private 3s and 4s program. And I believe we'll continue to see this as it expands to more districts. So I think the question is, how do we ensure that our families still have a first Jewish experience at this early stage? This is the question we're asking ourselves at Federation, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. I want to share just a quick timeline of how this came to be. I'm not going to talk about pre-2018. That's its own history. I'm happy to, if you're interested in that history lesson, let's have another conversation. But 2018 is when they really rolled out the public pre-K expansion as it exists today. And the first participating school districts were chosen to be eligible to apply based on the number of families they had that were below a certain economic threshold. Now it's really open to most districts, or it's expanding to more districts, and you can see just how rapidly it's expanding to more districts and how rapidly the funding is increasing. You can see here the Greater Metro, what it looks like in Greater Metro West. So currently it's in just a few districts. We have 5 synagogues who are currently serving as partners and host sites for these districts, 3 of which are represented tonight on the panel. Those 3 have been doing it for more than 1 year. The other 2 are in their first year. And you can see the list of districts that are eligible as of this year. Now, what I will say, not to cause, urgent chaos or urgent worry, is that some of these school districts have been on this list for a few years. And for example, West Orange was on this list for a few years before they applied. So just because they are eligible to apply to be a public pre-K district does not mean they're going to do so immediately. But I think it's worthwhile to make sure that you're in touch with the district and have a partner at the district so that you are prepared and know, what they're thinking and how it's sort of coming down the pike where you live. These are some of the questions we're asking ourselves here at Federation, and in terms of how we can support you and how we can support our Jewish community. How can we still provide a rich Jewish experience for families who are choosing to go to a public pre-K program, whether it's within one of our own synagogues or whether it's at another site. At the same time, how do we sustain strong private early childhood centers so that families continue to have a choice? Again, this mixed delivery system, New Jersey values the private programs, and we want to maintain strong ones in the Jewish community. We're asking, how do we enhance the Jewish experience at synagogues or organizations that are serving at the public pre-K site so that you are more than just a rental space? It's really a partnership, and you're still able to bring the Judaism out. And I think one of the things that we've done a lot in recent years to partner with our early childhood centers is the strong professional development that we support. And so we're asking, I think that's part of what we're asking, is how can we provide some successful opportunities for our leaders, our educational leaders and teachers to continue to strengthen our programs. And just sort of as a preview, recently approved, even as early as last week, we are planning a summer leadership retreat for our directors, assistant directors, folks in the early childhood leadership realm, to start to think about these issues on a real large scale. And we want to offer opportunities for talking about adaptive leadership, vision change. How do you engage stakeholders in this conversation? And then we would focus on different areas, providing affinity groups or, bringing in experts that can talk more to these issues and more to opportunities that might be available to support private or public and private pre-K in the Jewish community. So that's sort of what we're thinking about in Federation. I'm happy to answer some questions about that when we go to the Q&A, but I think more importantly, I'd like to move now to our panel. As Mindy introduced, Jenny, Mara, and Rick are really experts. They at TSTI, they've been doing it. They're in their 3rd year, I believe. 4th year. Sorry, Jenny. TSTI is in their 4th year. Temple B'nai Abraham is in their 2nd year, and B'nai Or is in their 5th year. So really some recent experts, and I'm excited to interview them. We have a list of questions that we'll go through and we'll share. I will sort of interview them as a panel and moderate, and then we will open the panel. We will open the questions to all of you if your questions have not been answered. As Sarah mentioned, we invite you to put those questions into the chat, and I'll continue to moderate. So welcome, Jenny, Rick, and Mara. We are so thrilled that you have joined us tonight. Thank you. I think we'll just start with a little overview, and I'm going to ask that each of you share again, who you are, how long you've been a host site, although I just shared that information, and why your synagogue decided to become a host site. Rick, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Well, thank you, Emily. Good evening, everyone. And I'll share a little bit about our journey. Our journey began over 5 years ago. At the time, Jenny Rubin was our early education director. And she's the one that introduced that to the organization. We've always tried to pride ourselves on being an innovator, taking on new ways of approaching what we do and being open to that. And we felt this was a great idea. What we were facing a lot of challenges if you look back before 2020, like everyone else was. Private preschool populations weren't growing, right? They were shrinking in many cases. We had a building that had a lot of empty space during the day that wasn't being utilized. We were dealing with COVID and the effects of that, which I don't need to go back into. And we knew we were in the middle of doing our strategic planning as well. And so we really looked at this from a strategic perspective, as I mentioned. First of all, we felt this program really actually aligns with our values as an organization. What is more Jewish than helping to provide a fair and level education playing field for all children? We're in Morristown, which is a very diverse community. We have, very high income, very immigrant population, bilingual. So we really wanted to be viewed as someone in the community that's uplifting everyone. We're a welcoming community as well, and we wanted to make sure that people got to see us in a different way, not only the Jewish population, but also the entire population that got to know that we were really committed to the community and that we were welcoming. It's a safe place for them and their children, and that really has gone a long way in making us part of the greater Morristown community. And as you mentioned, Emily, we felt that if we didn't, doing nothing wasn't an option because people were going to migrate over to the public program. So we took advantage of that because we saw that as an opportunity to grow our preschool overall and be able to provide services and capabilities to all of our students that we weren't able to provide when we were just private. I'll talk more about that later, but just to say where we are 5 years later, we've grown from 3 classrooms to 5 classrooms. We've got preschool, we got aftercare, we've got joint. We've started a camp now for preschool, so we've really expanded these capabilities, and our private enrollment's actually gone up. We have more private students now than we had when we started this program. So, it's a quick summary of what we saw as the benefit of doing this program.
Thanks, Rick. Why don't I move to Jenny? We'll go in order of how long you've been doing it.
So this is my 5th year being part of a public program, 1 year at Temple B'nai Or, and now the 4th year at TSTI in South Orange. And I think that for many of the same reasons that Rick said, our philosophy at TBO is the same, I think, as TSTI, which was if you can't beat them, join them. We knew that this was going to be something that was going to be prevalent in the community. And so we wanted to make sure that we could partner and make sure we could offer a really wonderful space and create these long-lasting relationships with the families as well as the people at the district. This has been an incredible experience, and the South Orange Maplewood School District operates a little bit differently than the Morris School District. So it was a learning curve for us when we first started TSTI, but it is something that has not just benefited the public students, it 100% benefits our private students as well. Being in a space with, again, we always were a community school at TSTI, like it was always a very diverse and welcoming place, even more so now. And again, it just plays to the values of we want to be part of the community, we want to support our community. And I can't think of anything that is more aligned with our values and the work that we do. So.
Thanks, Jenny. Nara.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll echo what Rick and Jenny said. We've been doing this about 1.5 years. We, just to give you a little background, that list that you saw, Livingston's been on that, able to offer public pre-K for a while now. We've been letting them know for a while. We have space. We would love to be a provider. Livingston's still not there yet. They want to build their own building. They want to put everybody in one place. But we sit on the border of West Orange and Livingston, in Short Hills. And I wouldn't recommend the way we did this, but 2 weeks before the school year started last year, West Orange called and said, we have a school that's not ready, because you have to make sure you have space that's ready. They're a mess. We know you have space and you've been asking, can we come in? So in 2 weeks, which is better, you don't have to think about all the answers to all the questions you're going to ask. We jumped in and took 2 classes. We felt like that was 2 classes, 15 kids in a class was where we could start. And this year we went from 30 kids to 60 kids this year. So year 2 is definitely better than year 1. There's a big learning curve, especially, like I said, with 2 weeks notice, but we got it done. It is vibrant. It has only benefited our synagogue and our schools, and everything else. At the same time, as we launched universal public pre-K, we then were also launching our Jewish aftercare program last year. So what worked well for us is that we had the aftercare that these parents were hoping for and expecting. We were a little more expensive than what they may have expected from their other places, but we were able to meet their needs. So that's a little bit of our story. Year 2's calmer.
So speaking of which, in year 1 and what you were able to accomplish in 2 weeks, Mara, can you speak to what you need to do to prepare for the space and operations and what you wish you would have known that you needed to do?
Sure. So, I mean, immediately every district's probably a little different. There are square footage guidelines, bathroom guidelines. For us, they had to be in the line of sight. So that kind of, limited what space for last year, at least, that we could offer. So that was immediate, what space meets their needs. Finding teachers which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, is also different than staffing our private preschools. There's different credentials that you need. And, with 2 weeks in, teachers were taken. We grabbed a couple from the school that wasn't ready, but we didn't get to, vet everybody and interview. You got to be on top of that and do that in advance. The paperwork is significant. This is a state program, and there is a lot to do. The accounting the first year and figuring out the budget and the allocations really is something we didn't realize. We knew it'd be a lot, but they have strict, reporting requirements, and you have to meet those deadlines, and all the backup paperwork and all of those things. There were a lot of questions about what we wanted to provide and not provide. And explaining kosher style to non-Jewish families and even Jewish families has taken a significant amount of time. So that's where we are. Those are kind of our startup issues.
Thanks, Mara. Rick or Jenny, do you have anything you would add to that first year and really thinking about and preparing?
I think that administrative work, I think that Mara touched on it, but that is huge. There's so much paperwork that not only that the staff needs to do, but the teaching staff as well. It's very, very complicated. I also, again, I think she touched on it a little bit, but just in terms of and Rick, you discussed it when we had our pre-meeting, but like the wear and tear on the facility, I don't think that it's just different. It is the curriculum is different. And so you just need to keep in mind not only wear and tear, but even in terms of custodial services, needing to shift to something different to ensure that the building is clean and has what it needs. And then for us also, there was additional security needed because we had children in spaces in different places. And so those are things I think that sometimes our school size didn't really change, but the way the building was being used and how it was being used and where people were, that changed. And then the addition of aftercare and before care, which we found was a necessity, also created a whole new bit of fun. So,
yeah, I don't really have much to add. Obviously, the amount of time on engaging the parents is significant, and you cannot spend enough time with these little ones' parents. And everything we faced. The thing that we want to be aware of, the state has very strict guidelines for salaries and experience and certifications and all that. You may or may not have the same thing on your private side. So we took it upon ourselves to say we need to be equitable and we needed to normalize that. And so there was additional work there to make sure that everyone was treated equally, no matter what program that they were supporting. So again, you got to focus on your prior schooling and policies, and the public really forces you to be more standardized and rigorous in a lot of that. And the other thing was we learned really you can lean on the district. They do have a lot of resources, so lean on them as much as possible for help and advice and guidance. They're there, they're there to make you successful.
Thank you all. And as part of that planning, how do you prepare for the school year calendar, given that there are going to be difference between your private and your public calendar? Jenny, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I think that is actually one of the toughest things as a synagogue-based school. If you're traditionally closed for certain holidays, being able to be open is required by the district. And so really looking at the calendar, and you have no flexibility, you have to keep to the school district days and days off. There is, again, choices that need to be made. And I'll go back to we leaned on our values. The idea is we're a partner, we're going to be a good partner. So even though we would normally be closed on Simchat Torah, we would make as an exception. We would close for our private program because part of what they're learning is Jewish holidays and rituals. And for the public program, we would be open, and we would just need to be conscientious of whatever else is going on in the building. Obviously, if there's a Gisker service going on in the sanctuary, we're not going to be running around and playing next door. But those are the things that the public school year runs longer. So the preschool camp that we run every year, 2 years ago, the last day of the public program was the first day of private camp. And that created a little bit of juggling, but you make it work because it's worth it. I think that is basically in terms of calendar. It's just making sure that you have the staff that you need when you need it. If your private staff is your aftercare staff, but they don't have school that day, who's covering aftercare? So a lot of scheduling, a lot of thinking, and sort of being dual brained and finding a way to make it work, because ultimately it's worth it. It's worth the work. So
I'll just offer just a slightly different perspective. Not that the calendaring is a lot, it is a lot. But we do choose to close for the holidays, both programs. So then we try to stick as close to schedule as possible, but we have to squeeze in a couple extra half days depending on where the holidays fall to get to the 180 guidelines. So, and others may also be working off of two different calendars. Our private preschool and our aftercare follow Livingston, and then we have West Orange, and kids who we also bring in for aftercare from Milburn. So it's a lot of moving parts. And then how do you handle the aftercare for these families? But there are ways around it, even if you want to be closed for the holidays.
we are not allowed. So I think it just
Oh.
depends on the district. There's absolutely no flexibility with the South Orange Maplewood School District. If they have school, we have school.
The additional thing that you have to think about as well as scheduling is we had a lot of activities for the congregants during the day, bridge club, canasta, whatever it may be, the book club, and all of a sudden, it's raining outside and the social hall is not available. What are you going to do with these people? And that was one of the concerns of the board is, what's the priority and how do you make decisions on space? So also consider all the other, the non-school activities that are going on during the day, and do you have sufficient space for those activities? And it is a juggling act, and there's a lot of people in the building, which is great. Nothing makes me happier, but aware of that as well.
I think one of the themes that we'll see throughout the night is that while there is some uniformity throughout New Jersey, a lot of this is district to district, and that it really is very different depending on where you live and what district you're partnering with. Rick, you touched briefly on the parents when you were talking about preparing. And so I'm curious if you could talk to us about how you engaged congregational stakeholders in this process, and did you get pushback? What was that process like for you?
It really was a change management exercise at the end of the day. some people, we try to position this not as a threat, but as an opportunity. How do we take advantage of it? How do we get the benefits from that? And again, it's all around communicating, listening to people. Of course, the private preschool parents were up in arms originally. How could you do this? What's this going to mean for our program? You're not going to pay attention to us. We're paying a premium. We want a special education. All the things. And the directors did a great job of being open, honest, transparent, listening, having workshops with the parents, and it took a lot of time, but at the end, because again, it's a tight group, so they get themselves a little worked up sometimes, honestly, and the directors did a great job, and I think we've only lost one family as a result of that, so it must have worked at the end of the day. And we had the board, like any board, we've got progressive thinkers, we've got more traditional thinkers, and we had to make sure to them that we were going to balance all the priorities. But again, this was a benefit because of the synagogue. There's things we could do that we couldn't do before that we now have scale, right? And it made a big difference. We really talked about the benefits. Yeah, sure, there was going to be pain. Sure, there was going to be some difficulties, but we stressed the positive. And now they're some of our biggest advocates. We've got an 18-month-old program, a 24-month-old program. They want to get their kids in the program sooner. So it's really changed. And what I tell people is come into the school at 9 o'clock when the buses are unloading and see those smiling faces and happy those kids are to be there. And they're learning Jewish traditions. They're learning non-Jewish traditions. It's just a wonderful place. And again, if you're thinking about it, go visit some of these programs that are in place, and I think you'll get a good picture that you can take back with you.
Mary, Jenny, do you have anything to add in terms of engaging stakeholders?
I do think, again, going back to when I was up in AOR, I think what Rick said was really important. Like we had these town halls where people could come and really talk to us about what their concerns were. So we were able to address them directly. Some of it was they needed to really see, they needed to understand how it was going to happen. And in both schools that I worked in up in AOR and at TSTI, the main thing for us was to make it feel like one school with two tracks so that it felt like it's one big school family while highlighting what the difference is for the private program, because there are really big differences. And it was important that people understood that you got music and sports and dance in our private program during the day. And that wasn't part of what the public program got. They are on the same playgrounds, they're using the same, parts of the building, but it's not the same curriculum. There is a distinction, and you're going to have people who really care about the private curriculum and learning in that way. And then there are people who are really thrilled with the public curriculum and are really happy to do that. So it's just really, again, making it clear, having those conversations. For us, it's ensuring that we're, engaging all of our families, that they know that our administrative staff is there for them at all times. We want everyone to feel at home when they're in our building. So again, ensuring that we have enough people and enough support for them, I think is what always has made it work. So.
I don't have anything different to add. I will say though, Rick said they lost one family. We lost 3 by doing the public pre-K. We also had a much shorter window to get people used to the idea.
Thank you. So you've all sort of touched on how it fits into your synagogue's values, how you've really incorporated it into the body of the work that you do. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the community benefits that you've seen and how it ties into your institutional vision and mission? Mara, can we start with you?
Sure. Community values, how it ties in with the institution. So I will say we just, in terms of data, 20%, look, first of all, as a public pre-K, you cannot ask them if they are Jewish. You have to find other ways to bring it up. For example, when they were touring our facility and deciding if they wanted to take their spot, right? They said, "Oh, is that a sanctuary? Or are they going to go in that? Oh, I did this I went to Rosh Hashanah service as a kid." And you kind of just keep a checklist of it. So based on our knowledge, 20% of the kids that we're getting here are Jewish, which is interesting. And about so that's one kind of cohort that we're looking at. How do we have them come to other programs and get involved in our community further than just being here for the preschool day? Some of them go to our Jewish aftercare. So about 25% of all the 60 kids go to our aftercare, which is a Jewish aftercare. And those kids are learning Hebrew words and all holidays and Jewish values. And they're taking that home no matter what they're doing. They'll all tell you what mitzvah is and tzedakah, and everybody's a mora or a mora. So that really also ties into our community, and they're bringing it out. Also, the parents are excellent advocates for your school. They love our space. They love the security. They love the warmth and the greetings, things that, Rick and Jenny also talked about. But those parents are out there in the community then talking about how fabulous your space is. And that only then helps your whole standing in the area when you're talking and recruiting for other things. So there's that. But you do have to walk a fine line between, actually, you really aren't supposed to bring up the Jewish at all to the public preschool kids. And you have to find other ways around that. So that's a little bit about that.
I can also say that, and I'm sure that the other schools are finding the same thing, that we are finding many of our families are joining the temple. They're, coming in as public preschool students and joining, that their younger siblings are attending our 2-year-old program. This year we had 2 younger siblings who stayed in our private program for the 3 year, did not go into the public program because they were just really happy with how that was going. And so it is definitely a benefit. It's, again, definitely in line with our program. Our synagogue as a whole has a very firm mission of engaging with families who have young children. And so every family on our monthly newsletter, there's a link at the bottom that says, if you want to learn more about Jewish programming, click here. So we're not selling them, but they have the opportunity to see and to attend. We have public families who participate in aspects of our parent board. We really want to make sure there's representation when we do family, like parent events. Every parent in the schools is invited. Unlike the children events, we do separate things for the public children and separate things for the private children, because we really feel that it's important that the parents get to know each other and that the parents form their community and their friends, just like in all of our schools. The parents forming those relationships are really important, and we know that that translates into a continued journey together. So.
And we view it the same way. I mean, the public program actually gives us an expanded pipeline for new congregants who may not have joined private school, but they're getting exposed to the synagogue. So there's benefits there. And then we do some joint events. Like we have on some Friday nights, we have a Tot Shabbat, and it's open to public and private. And some of the public non-Jewish kids come in because they like the dancing and the Israeli music and the food. And so we make sure that they can attend those events as well as, and then we have a family fun day where all families come in, and again, building those communications and networks that Jenny had mentioned are so important for all of us.
And I think hearing what you're saying, obviously the engaging of the Jewish families is such an important piece of it. And Mary, you sort of touched on this, that the opportunity to engage families who do not identify as Jewish and seek allies in our community at a time when we really need allies, this is a really great opportunity to build that at such a young age and such a young moment in their families' lives. I'm getting notes from my children. I'm going to move on to staffing. I know we sort of started to talk about staffing, but Jenny, can you share with us how that works and what is included? There's a lot going on there, I think.
So I think sometimes people are under the misconception that the teachers are hired by the school district. They aren't. They're hired by the institution. They are our employees, but the district has very, very firm guidelines, as everybody has mentioned prior, about what teachers need to pay, what kind of benefits they need to have, that they need to, in our district, they need to have a mechanism to contribute to retirement. Again, it's not the school district retirement, but they have to have a mechanism. In South Orange, Maplewood School District, they prefer that teachers are special ed certified in addition to P through 3, which is preschool through grade 3 certified through the state, because our classes are inclusion classrooms. So we have in all of our classrooms, we have 12 gen ed students and 3 IEP identified students. And so that is their request. Not always the case, because again, teachers are hard to find, and good teachers are sometimes amazing without that special ed certification, but they have to be P through 3 certified. And so they have different professional development requirements from our private staff. And there is there is as I said, they are monitored through the state for certain things. Our classrooms are monitored on an environmental rating scale, all of that to remain in compliance. And that also requires them, they are using whatever, there are 3 state approved, sorry, I'm probably jumping somewhere you don't want me to go, Emily, but there are 3 state approved curriculum. And so the teachers need to be trained in the curriculum that you are using in your school, as well as whatever system. For most of us, it's Teaching Strategies Gold to do assessments of the children. And so there's a lot. The teachers are required to, be able to, they do progress reports that are different than what we do in our private program, all kinds of stuff. But really the biggest thing, and Rick touched on it before, is the salary requirements. And so the district has a very clear scale as to how teachers should be paid. And the expectation is you're going to be as close as possible to that scale. They're serious about it. And I personally feel like that's a benefit for our private teachers, because it allows us to talk about the fact that many of them are underpaid, and we have the opportunity as institutions to make sure that they're able to earn what they should be earning, regardless of whether they're teaching in a private program or a public program. I'm going to get off my soapbox now.
Aaron, Rick, did you have anything to add? Did Jenny cover it all?
Well, staffing is, we had to implement new payroll systems and our whole HR function, which didn't exist, but I mean, it kind of did, but you really have to up your game there on scale. And finding, I think Sneh, actually, I'll reach out to Sneh. She's participating. She's our director. But, just 2 or 3 teachers get sick, and it's finding substitutes, and it can be really hard work. Really hard work. So you got to build those networks and make sure you've got the backup teachers when you need them. But we do lean on the district as well. They're very helpful to us sometimes when we need teachers. They can provide that help for us. So I think it keeps coming back to the administration, right? You're going to be spending more time with forms and reporting than you ever have. So just be prepared to make sure you got the right leadership and staff on board.
So maybe
I also
go ahead.
I also think I didn't make it clear, like in our private classrooms, we have co-teachers, and in the public classrooms, it's a very distinctly lead teacher, assistant teacher. We're required to have a family worker, someone who is really reaching out to the parents, and we have someone who holds that role in addition to another role. We have a designated admin person who does the administrative work. We have a designated floater for the public classrooms to ensure that the teachers are getting their breaks, because they're there for a full day, and it's really important that they are getting their break and there's coverage. So again, it's just, as much as we do that in our private program too, it's just a little bit more rigid because of the way that the program is set up, you need to make sure that you have all of your bases covered because you want to be in compliance and to be a good partner with the district because they are great partners, as Rick said. We are so lucky. We really have the best partners in our district, and I don't know what we'd do without them. It would not be as great an experience without them.
One thing I forgot to mention, and again, maybe different by district, we've got bilingual requirements. So we've got two, Spanish speaking staff members because again, communicating with the parents and child doesn't show up, got to make sure you're speaking in their language that they feel comfortable with. So we didn't have that. Now we have Spanish speaking capabilities.
Sorry, someone in the office just leaving. I just also wanted to say that for at least in West Orange, we have to provide whatever benefits we're providing to our private school teachers, we also have to provide to the public school teachers. So you do have to take that into account when you're budgeting, that many of them are going to want to take advantage of your health insurance. Maybe that's going to be helpful because you'll have more people using your health insurance plan. But you do have to, whatever benefits, however you do your vacation days, however you do the health insurance, the retirement plans, it does have to be equal.
Rick, you've spoken a lot about the wear and tear and the paperwork. Can you tell us a little bit about how budgeting works?
I could spend a couple of days on that if you want to do it. I don't think that'll work. So actually, when this was all starting, I was the vice president of financial health. So I was the guy with all the spreadsheets and trying to budget all that. And we implemented a completely new budgeting system right before this, zero-based budgeting, driver-based budgeting, being more granular, being more disciplined in our budgeting process, which served us well. So, as much as you can make your budgeting system at the right level that you can actually do reporting and analysis on is going to be critical. And then we also do segment reporting, so we could do profit and loss by school, by public school, by religious school, by worship. It was very important for us to see that. But one of the things you're going to have to figure out is how you want to allocate your costs, right? Your building cost. You got a building. It's open, right? You got to work and figure out how you want to allocate the cost. And I think Mara had mentioned there's also reporting that you need to provide back to the district about your financial situation that may be different than how you report internally. So you may have two sets of reporting requirements that you need to understand. So make sure you're aware of that and you can set that up. But I think it was Jenny said is, there are going to be not hidden costs, but not direct costs that you're going to have. You're going to have to keep the lights on longer. You're going to have to replace those carpets. The plumbing's going to break. The toilets are going to break. It's just getting more wear and tear in the building. So you're going to have to hire more custodial staff or however you service your building. Your security is going to be increased. So, reach out to those of us who've done this before. If you're thinking about the budgeting, and we can help look at it and make sure you've got that accounted for. Payroll, benefits, all of that is going up. But then again, there's other sources of income that you can look at. We've instituted a lot of new programs, aftercares and so forth, which are new revenue sources. There's grants that are available, so I would encourage you to take advantage of that if you can on the revenue side. And then we've got congregants who are very supportive of education and making endowment contributions and so forth. So think about it very holistically when you think about the economics of this. But for those of us and others who've been through this, it is financially beneficial to you if you can make this work. It may take a while till you get the bumps out of it, but once you've got scale and you've got it working, it does have financial benefits.
I'm glad you said that, Rick, because I know we can all talk about, oh, this is great for community and values, which it is, but it is a bottom line piece as well, which is that done correctly, you will be bringing in significant dollars for your synagogue.
Right. I'm not sure that everyone understands that you actually have to spend every dollar that the district gives you. And so, again, it's those allocating of costs, things like a director's salary and director's benefits that would normally be completely on the public side, I mean, on the private side, gets, for us, split between the like 65 and 35 based upon our public-private. And then the employees who are strictly public comes out of the public. Plus, again, there are costs, like security costs and custodial costs that can be directly applied because we are using it specifically for the spaces where the public classrooms are. So understanding that there is you have to spend it all, but the way that it's allocated allows you to have some room on your private budget where you might not have prior.
Thank you. I'm
Let's
sure.
see, and if that's confusing, my CFO will happily talk that through to anybody who needs. She
I was
spent a
going
lot
to
of
say, I
time
can
working on
imagine
it.
that there will be more questions about that, whether it's tonight or in follow-up. Let's switch a little bit to enrollment. I know that sometimes the timing can be different between public and private, or the sort of mechanisms of how that works. Mara, do you want to start? I know, and this is something that's very different between each of the districts, so I hope that all three of you will answer this. Mara, if you want to get started with West Orange and how it works with you at Temple
Sure.
B'nai Abraham.
No problem. So first of all, West Orange, so we are this classes are 3s and 4s, as Emily had mentioned, but the 3s and 4s are combined into one class. So let's say you have a class of half 3s and half 4s. Assuming all's right in the class and you don't want to move anybody around, the kids stay in the same class. So the 4s graduate, the 3s move up to be the 4s, and you're enrolling 3s into that class. It's a looping system. So the kids ideally stay in the same class with the same teachers. So you have that. So right now in West Orange, for example, it is lottery time because they do not have enough space for all of the kids in the district at this point. So we're determining how many kids are moving on. Siblings also get first dibs into the space. And if you're in their building, they get even more higher ranking. So we actually had a couple families enroll into our private pre-K, so for the 2s, so that they get spots into 3s. I'm hoping some are going to stay, like Jenny said, they did in hers. But in the meantime, there's this whole system of counting who's staying, who's eligible to stay, who has siblings, and then how many open spaces you have. And then West Orange is doing the lottery right now, and they'll and then they'll assign people. In our case, it's based on geographic location. So if you know where Temple B'nai Abraham's located, we seem to be pulling mostly from the St. Cloud, Gregory area, which is the most convenient West Orange communities into our school. So I think for this year that we're in now, we were pretty set. We had 60 spaces. I think we had 55 of them filled, pretty quickly. And then they just added on, or if someone decided they didn't want to take it, they had a whole wait list. So we were full quickly.
So looking at it from a private public perspective, for us, we're doing private registration for next year right now. People have to fill out their stuff for the lottery. I think it's due by the beginning of March. And then we won't find out who's actually gone in. Last year, we found out the first week in June. And then they actually did 3 lottery rounds before school started in September. So we lost, and I will preface it to say we over-enrolled because we had a really good feeling about how many children we were going to lose. But we lost 27 children to the public program in June. And actually, I shouldn't say that. We lost 22, I think, in June. And then we lost another like 5 in August. We again had over enrolled, so we were okay. And just to give perspective, I mean, we have 100 and this year 68 children in our school. So losing 30 didn't put our school out of business, but for some schools it does. And so it's just, we've been working really closely with our partners in South Orange to let them know the impact that it has on us if we can't fill those spots, to see if they can actually move their date up. And June was moved up from July the prior year, from August the year before. So they're moving in the right direction. We're just hopeful that it's going to keep moving up to give us more time to accommodate, because it impacts us in terms of how much staff we hire. Again, we were really lucky this year that we had the right amounts of students for the right amount of staff, but we actually came close to being having too much staff hired, and we don't, none of us want that. The goal is to make sure that our private program can still thrive. But we also accept the fact that it's sometimes really hard to say no to free preschool. So in terms of that, we are missing 2 IEP students. That's it. Every other class is filled from the district, and we'll see what next year brings. We also, again, have 3s and 4s. Our 3s stay in our school and move up. We try and keep them in the same class, which makes it nice. There is no priority given to children who attend our school in the private to go to the public. It is supposedly random. And in order to adhere to the diversity regulations that are set forth by the district, there's a whole DEI thing with South Orange Maplewood. And so we, again, we won't know what we have till we have it. So, but we always make it work, and we're always happy to have the families that we have. So I'll leave it there.
Again, not much different. We have about 130 Mind students in our preschool programs. And it is the pipeline management really that's tricky. When we started this, the fear was that we were going to not have enough classrooms for our private. And I didn't want to be the one to tell the congregation that we couldn't take private students because we had too many public students. Thank God we haven't faced that. But every year we look at the capacity and we make it work. And it takes work, and credit to all of our staff and directors. They do a fabulous job, because you need to start hiring teachers now, getting them locked down if you want the absolute best teachers. So I don't have anything more to add to that.
Apologies for my struggles with unmuting. I think we could talk about enrollment and budgeting a lot. And again, there may be more questions. I just have a few more questions, and then we'll open the questions. I can see that some of them have started coming into the chat already, but I wanted to, Jenny, you spoke briefly about the curriculum. So I just wanted to learn a little bit more about that. What is the public curriculum, and are there ways to infuse Jewish content? I know not during the public day, those 6 hours, that are considered the public day, but what sort of is the opportunity to engage families Jewishly, to infuse Jewish content with the students?
So, there are 3 curriculum that are approved by the state of New Jersey. It's creative curriculum, tools of the mind, and high scope. Those are the 3 that I think are offered to each district, and they can choose. In South Orange Maplewood School District, we use Tools of the Mind. Tools of the Mind has its own social emotional learning component, and so although we may not be talking about Jewish values, we do talk about values. The district actually values is a big part of what they do, and so I think the fact that children are learning it within a Jewish building, regardless of the fact that we're not including Judaic content, does have an impact. As I mentioned prior, we have I can't talk today, a family outreach coordinator whose specific job is to make sure that any family that's interested in participating in events for Jewish families with young children or interfaith families with young children have that option. I can't remember if it was Rick or Mara who said it, but I think it was Rick. I mean, we have many of our families that are of other faiths who choose to participate sometimes in our Families with Young Children program because they enjoy the feeling of community. And I think if anything, what's more Jewish than that? There's always a seat at the table. Our doors are open. We are meeting people where they're at. And we're ensuring that our Jewish space is a wonderful place to be, and how that relays out into the community and how that builds goodwill and support and care, I think is maybe the best thing that we do like every day, whether it's with our private families or our public families, having that feeling, that good feeling about TSTI and the people who work there and the people we support, all of the families. I mean, I'm trying to think of how to put this in a way that makes sense, but it is really our goal, the directors of the program, to ensure that every family feels like they are the most important family in our school. We work really hard to make our big school feel like a small school. And we do that by cultivating community within each classroom, across the age levels, and then across the entire school and greater community. And so that's the way that we do it. And so again, I don't know that I answered your question, but I hope that I did. If you want to ask a more clarifying question, I'm happy to continue talking.
No, that was great and that was helpful. And I have a few more questions, but I want to give time for questions from folks here. So I'm gonna move to the questions that I'm seeing come in the chat, and invite everybody, all of our participants, that if you have any questions for Jenny, Rick, or Mara, to put it into the chat. One of the questions I see is this question about the districts requiring you to open your building for holidays, even if it's an Orthodox facility. I will say that the schools that the synagogues that are participating here in Greater Metro West, we have 2 Reform synagogues, 2 conservative synagogues, and 1 unaffiliated. Is that how you define yourself, Abraham?
Independent.
Independent, I like that. So we don't have an example of an Orthodox synagogue here. We have friends across the river in New York, the Riverdale Y, who was really sort of one of the trademark folks in New York City that did it. And my hope is that we will bring Emily Hausman, who is the former director there, to Greater Metro West to give some background on that. But I don't know if any of the 3 of you can speak to just that issue of being forced to open on a holiday.
I mean, we're not. So I'm not, West Orange isn't forcing us to. Our only struggle is how to meet the 180 days when all the holidays are during the week. But I will say, I mean, I see that Alana also asked about saying, can we even talk about Hanukkah? I mean, we have it is a synagogue, and we have our regular programming happening. So while there's not the Hanukkah decorations in the public preschool classrooms, it's in the hallway, right on the way to their classroom. They can see it in other spaces, but their classrooms are neutral.
I mean, along that point, like obviously, I'm saying obviously, but in this area, the school districts are closed on Yom Kippur. They are closed on Rosh Hashanah. It is the other holidays where, again, we do close for the private program that we have no choice. We had to close because, if everybody remembers, there was an issue 2 Novembers ago where Essex County schools needed to close for a day, and the district allowed us to not make up that day because it was like an emergency closure. But other than that, we have always had to keep to their schedule. There is no flexibility. So I think that it depends upon how needed a school would be in an area, that there may be some flexibility because they need the space and they want to be able to accommodate. We had a little bit more flexibility in Morristown in terms of room sizes because they desperately wanted a building in that part of Morristown when they were first starting, that they were maybe a little bit more flexible than they might be now. It just, it really depends. It really depends.
Made the schedule work. It's not a problem. We figured it out, and I'm accommodating to all parties.
And just related, in terms of food, I know that what you will permit the children to bring in if they're bringing their own lunch. And I believe all districts, I don't know if all districts require this, but at least some of them require that you are able to provide children food. And so just how does that work? I don't know if kashrut is an issue for your specific synagogues. And I know we have we have folks from Ohab Shalom and Temple Bethel or Congregation Bethel on here. If they want to pipe in and speak to that as well.
So I'll say we're still a work in progress because we're just a year and a half in. So there is a food program that you have to take all of the courses and pass the test to get certified to see if you can even provide food with their food program and get reimbursed for it. We're like at the end stages of finishing all of that certification. So in the meantime, we've had flexibility that kids can bring in their lunches, and we did put some restrictions on it. There's in their lunchbox, there can't be the meat and the cheese in it. And then no pork products in going into the school. So that's been what was challenging as parents who are trying to get their head around, not having a meat and cheese sandwich, what that looks like. And, it's going to be a little complicated as we figure it out. I mean, technically they're supposed to have a glass of milk with their lunch if you follow all their rules. We do offer lunch for our private preschool. So one option is to also just offer that to the public school parents, and just make sure it's meeting the nutritional guidelines. So I think it's a little tricky. Maybe other people have figured it out better, but right now we're just kind of going, like I said, kosher style and trying to make that work.
We use an outside food service. It's available to every child in our school. They follow our rules. We are kosher style-ish. They don't offer any pork products. They don't offer, a parent can opt because of our school for milk and meat in the same lunch. That's fine if they're making that choice, because we are not kosher. But there's no nut products, there's no pork products, no shellfish. And the CACFP is really difficult process. And so for children who qualify for free or reduced lunch, we pick up that cost, and our food supplier provides a meal that meets those guidelines, and that is what we do. And for free and for reduced, we actually let the parents go on and they pick, and we still cover their cost. But we do not offer lunch every day. The district, the first year had because it was the year after COVID, that 21-22 school year, the district was offering free lunch to everybody. So that year we had to, when we paid for every child to have lunch that year, but not after that.
And we're kosher stylish, and we have an employee that works in our kitchen and provides lunch for snacks or whatever you want to call it for the kids. But again, that's something you need to think through for the details.
Kara Bruin, I see you have your hand up. Kara is the director, the early childhood director at Ohab Shalom in South Orange, which is in their first year of partnership with the district. Kara, did you want to say a few words about this?
I did actually. So it is definitely a district specific when it comes to the guidelines, I guess, on which for us, South Orange Maplewood, we encountered, excuse me, we tried to put in that kosher style recommendation for our public program as well as our private, and we had a lot of pushback. So what happened was Kashrut had to meet with the rabbi, and then they kind of came to an agreement that the public side was allowed to bring, we could not say no to anything, right? So they could bring shellfish, they could bring pork, they could bring meat and cheese together, but we gave a guidance, right? Saying we would love if you respected our synagogue and did not have those things in the lunch. We put out a PSA that next day, the first kid showed up with shrimp, right? It was bound to happen. But that is how we've kind of allowed that our food service that we can have lunch through, the parents can sign up, is vegetarian. So we do that across the board. So the families know that, but they are allowed to bring anything. We can't, the district at South Orange Maplewood does not allow us to say no to certain things. So that was a big adjustment for a conservative synagogue.
Thank
For
you,
sure.
Kara. Thank you, Kara. And I know at Bethel, I don't know about what the children are and are not allowed to bring, but I do know that the lunch that is available to families that they provide is certified kosher, and they use it for food service that does provide kosher food. I'm just looking through some of the questions. Going back to salaries, do all of the schools strive for parity, pay parity in the public and private teacher salaries?
I feel like I'm the only one who hasn't answered that.
I think strive is the right word. I think that we all want to pair teachers as much as we possibly can. Then I'll let you answer that, Mara. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, especially because we're newer in, we have raised the hourly rate. You know, they were getting a very low hourly rate. And so as we've hired for our aftercare program, we've brought the preschool teachers up with that level. You know, look, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I can afford parity for, you know, for what these teachers are making if they're making $65,000 a year as a lead teacher. But it's a great goal, and we're trying to do better. I'm not sure we'll be able to get to that rate though.
Yeah, we have the same, you know, we're working towards it. We've actually, when we had new roles open up, we actually offer those people maybe later working extra hours and taking on more responsibility to increase their salary as ways of, you know, we're getting something and we're able to afford it that way. But they're not, you know, the certification process is different, and, you know, there's a lot to reconcile through when you compare it. But I think we all start with the same starting position. It sounds like that we're working in the same direction as well.
And can you explain a little bit in more detail what benefits are required to offer to the public teachers?
In our district, we have to offer them health benefits, and which we pay for. And we offer them, again, a mechanism for them to contribute to retirement.
Ours isn't mandatory. We offer, if they want to join our health program, they can, or retirement, you know, pension, but it's not required. It's they can make that decision, and then we can offer to them.
Ours is, again, whatever we were offering our other teachers is what we have to offer to them. So in our case, it is health insurance. We cover a significant subsidy for the employee, but nothing for the family. So, you know, there's that. There's the ability to put into a retirement plan. We do not contribute anything to that. You know, in the vacation days, and obviously there's dental and all of that, but it's not a very big package.
Jumping back to when I was talking about the community study, and we talked about the needs of parents and how it's grown and changed in recent years. How do you balance the needs of parents with the needs of institutions? And I guess in some cases I'm talking both about the private and the public. Obviously, this is a conversation about public.
I think in general, what we've noticed is that after COVID and after, you know, people were working from home, families that used to work out of the home would send their children to school for half the day, and then like a babysitter would pick them up and bring them home. And once parents started working 3 or 4 days from home, it no longer became an option for them. They needed full-time care. And so we've seen it in our private program and in our public program that parents need as many hours as possible to have their children in school. And for us, the first year at TSCI, we actually did 8 to 6 was our hours. And we found that it actually wasn't working for us, that it was taking too much of a toll on our staff, because it seemed to be the same people that wanted to open, that wanted to close, and we were having a really hard time finding qualified people for aftercare. And we liked having our own staff and having that overlap. And we as a test, we opened up aftercare till 5, and we lost 1 family. And so, and we had 20 aftercare spots for 170 families the first year. of children the first year. We went up to 30, 35, 40, and next year we'll have 50. And so we're continually trying to adapt and change what we're offering to ensure that we're meeting the needs. It's just, again, it's across the board. That is how we do it. And we reevaluated the days that we offered aftercare, again, to make sure that we had time for our whole staff to be able to have professional development together. That was really important to us. And so we actually also cut back. There are 4 days during the year where we don't offer aftercare, so that our entire staff, whether there's a half day for the public program, the whole staff could come together. We can do a full staff meeting. So again, I think I answered your question about the needs of the community and how we're adapting, and how we balance that is by really watching to make sure that we're not meeting the needs of the parents on the backs of our staff, but also changing how we're hiring our staff and how we're creating the positions to ensure that, again, it feels better for everybody.
We're doing this. I mean, our before and after care has grown significantly. I think their kids are enjoying the time there, but it is a long day. And the other thing is we can only go so late at night because we've got other events starting, and we got to make sure the rooms are clean and the hallways are clean. You know, so again, this logistics. I think we go to 5:30 in the evening. Most of the kids, some parents forget. No, just kidding. No. But I think it's a long day for the staff, and we're sensitive to that.
So I just want to give everybody sort of a heads up, participants, if you have any other questions, here now is your chance to put it into the chat. I have one final question that I'll ask to our presenters, to our panelists, but I certainly don't want to cut us off before we've answered all of your questions. So please take a minute to write them to the chat while they're answering this final question. Knowing that folks on this call are starting to think about public pre-K, whether it exists in their district or they anticipate that it will exist in their district in the near future, what recommendations do you have for them to start preparing now in this first, in the pre-work as they prepare for the first year? Rick, can we start with you?
Benefit you have now that we didn't have 5 years ago, that there's schools up and running. Visit them, talk to the directors, see what they're dealing with, really engage discussions with the districts, understand what their requirements are. There's no amount of prep that'll be enough, to be honest with you. But the more time, and then find friends that you can network. And I know there are our directors have benefited from other directors, and picking up the phone. How did you handle this? This happened. Those are the best. Those are the best tools. The best recommendations I would have, and quite honestly, engage the parents. Things are going to go wrong. They're not going to go smooth all the time, but make sure that they trust you and that they know you're working for their child.
I know in Morristown, I was actually talking to the district for 3 years before it even became an opportunity for us to become partners. There were mumblings and talking. And so anytime there was a meeting around what could be, I was there sitting there with my notebook and taking notes about who I wanted to make friends with. I know Carol did the same thing in South Orange. She immediately sought out who she needed to, seek out to create those relationships, because having those district partners before you're actually a district partner makes the process easier. There was already lots of communication. There's lots of understanding. There had been talk beforehand about what they were looking for, what we would need to do. So even though it didn't become a real conversation till the year before we did it, the conversations have been happening. And the planning had been happening, which is sort of where we're at with all of the people who don't have it now. It's to really start thinking about what it might look like in your building, what might you need to do, what kind of changes to the building might be necessary. Because if you start thinking about it when you're not 2 weeks before, like Mara was, you actually have time to really, again, as Rick said, talk to some of us who've been doing it for a while to find out what you really need versus what you don't need, and to do it in a really thoughtful way. I mean, I'm sure that the district in West Orange was so grateful that Mara's building was ready to go. And they were lucky, because otherwise it can be really, really difficult if you're rushing to make something happen. I mean, I think about our furniture didn't get delivered until 3 days after we opened the public program in South Orange. We were lucky because there was a flood and all of the stuff would have been ruined. Like, it just sort of was divine intervention of some sort. But I mean, that's the kind of stuff, like we lucked out, but we wouldn't have had our classrooms ready in time. So if we just planning and thinking it through, and again, making sure you have the right people that you're partnering it with, it just makes it, again, a much better experience.
Also, I'll also add, just make sure, you know, your staff is on board. It's a different, running a public preschool is a different program and a different kind of job than you may have signed up for as a Jewish preschool director, right? There's Jewish values and all of it, as we've all talked about, but it's a different job, and it's a, you know, it with the paperwork and all of those things. And just make sure that you're looking at the right staff and everybody's on board. And if you need to hire someone else to help with the paperwork, you know, you need to be able to do that, you know, to help it all. And then I just can't stress enough, like making sure you're speaking to some of our controllers about the finances, and how to, you know, how to determine the placement of things. They give you the percentages that you're allowed to use for your allocations, but I mean, even something as simple as, you know, we don't have a mortgage bill, you know, we rent free. So how do we figure out what to put in there for our cost for the building and how much percentage? Like, it's complicated. And once it's done, it's done. But take advantage of all of us who have done that. And just be patient as you onboard, as you onboard your office staff and your financing staff and your teachers and your preschool directors and everybody else. I think it's well worth it.
Thank you all so much. Every time I talk to each of you, I learn so much, and tonight is no different. And I hope that our friends and colleagues today feel the same way. So, Rick, Mara, Jenny, thank you for your expertise and your time, and sort of for inviting others to be in touch with you in the future, because I'm sure that they will.
Okay, so I'll also echo what she just said. Wow. So thank you to our panel and to everyone who asked the questions. We really appreciate your time and engagement, and we hope you found this to be thought-provoking and valuable. So I just want to put in one plug before everyone goes. We actually, the Synagogue Leadership Council that I mentioned earlier, we host a series of seminars throughout the year, and our next one is actually on Tuesday, February 25th at 7:30 on Zoom, and it's how to engage millennials and build a vibrant Jewish future. So this is another hot topic, which I think will have a lot of participation on. So just, you know, you probably saw this in some of the mails that you get, just wanted to draw your attention. So thank you again for everyone who you know, stayed for the whole hour and a half. This is a really complex topic. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Have a very good night.